Hey, so this is Rodeska coming to you with a video tutorial for ZBrush character creation and why polygonal or low resolution, I should say, it's not really polygon modeling, but it's low resolution sculpting is so important inside of ZBrush and why it's important to establish that right off the bat. So we're going to be going over a little bit of my methods for polygonal low resolution sculpting, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of why I do this. So you can see right here I have this character's head in front of me. It's not really a head that's going to be used for anything. It's more along the lines of practice. And I used a lot of low resolution to get the shape of this character's head to look perfect, especially in the eye area and the mouth area. And you'll notice in a lot of my time-lapse videos I do this a lot for characters where I will make these really low resolution shapes, and that will help me establish my character a lot better. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you some examples of how you can sculpt with low resolution and why it's important. So here I have a time-lapse video that I made inside of ZBrush of the sculpting of this head. You can see that I start off with a Dynamesh sphere. Then I kind of like bump it up a little bit to a lot lower resolution, or excuse me, a little bit higher resolution, and then we start bumping in the shapes of just the main forms on the outside, and pretty soon I'll actually lower the resolution of this a lot lower to get the just the main forms on the outside. But right now we're kind of focusing on just the anatomy and shapes and things like that of like kind of like the silhouette for right now. And I don't really like this method, how high poly this character is, but it's something that I can control because I've had lots of experience with doing this sorts of stuff where I learn how to control high poly stuff like this and what brushes to use and when to use them. So it's a little bit easier for me, but if you're trying to like get this kind of shape, I'd say like get a lot more comfortable with lower resolution before you start, doing stuff like this. But you can see it's pretty low resolution in the head area in terms of like getting the main details. And you can see I'm using all of this low resolution to my advantage. It looks like crap, but you can see that just even just using that to my advantage, I'm using all of the low res to block in a lot of my forms, pushing the geometry past its limit to, let's say, pull it up towards the eyelid, even if it's like down by the cheek area, pulling it up towards the eyelid and, giving me that nice resolution for the eyelid, and then just prioritizing the resolution in certain areas that I need it. I don't really care about the look or the anatomy. I'm just trying to get those main forms in there so that I can use that when I start to subdivide it or even higher, make higher resolution. So I don't really care about a lot of the stuff that's going on the the inside, or how it's holding up the the shading or anything like that. I don't care about any of that. I'm just trying to get the main forms. That's all I care about at this point. So of course the eyeballs look really weird because the eyeballs I didn't really time lapse those, so they're just gonna stay put for a while until I move the face around to the eyeball where the eyeballs are actually positioned. But yeah, you can see that doing this is a lot better, and I think I subdivided it once to get a little bit more resolution in the mouth area to build up the forms a little bit better, and then also build up the eyes a little bit better and getting the anatomy to look a little bit better. So we're going to be going over how you can do this and how you can achieve it. And you can see boom, 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 boom. Just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. Doing that same thing for the head. And we just keep on refining it and just keep on bumping up the resolution. If I were to lower the resolution, you can see that, now we got some really nice forms in there. After a couple of subdivisions and a whatchamacallit, a zremesh. So we're getting some nice forms in there. So we have about 740,000. That's too much for a model, but it is now we're ready to put like a lot of the nice forms on there. And we still have a little bit of issues. This is why we retopo, because we still have a lot of issues with the geometry being too high poly, and it's just hard to work with when you try to when you try to subdivide it and smoothen it down, it looks really terrible. So we're going to be going over some examples of how I do this, or we're going to be going over how to do this, so let's do that. So we're going to just go to this sphere right here. I think this is pretty okay. It's not the greatest, but what we can do is polymesh 3D. We can turn this on its side like this. So we're not getting these, because I don't really want these right here to be a part of the top or the bottom of the head, because it skews, because there's so much triangulation going on here, too much. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go to our, make sure we are in symmetry mode, and we're going to go here and we're just going to lower the resolution of this like really low. This will help us to get our main forms in. So I think this is pretty okay. If you want to go lower, you can. And we're just going to try to get in our main forms, and working with the move brush and stuff like that. If you want to, you can lower the intensity. That's also important, because when you're blocking in the main forms, you don't want to overdo a lot of this stuff. So I normally leave it around like 21, 20 in strength, just so we can kind of block in these main shapes. You can see why I didn't want those triangulations happening. And then I also use the clip curve, because the clip curve works well with symmetry. We can actually flatten the sides down to get that nice flattened shape that we normally typically would get with a head. And we're just focusing on the main forms for right now. We're not going to go into really high details. We're just focusing on the main forms and try to get those right. So if you guys have worked with ZBrush for a long time, then you know that in ZBrush there's this relax brush, which will average out the polygons to make everything a little bit more uniform. And the way you do that is you hold shift, click on the mesh while using the smooth brush, hold shift, click on the mesh, and then release shift while still clicking on the mesh, or while you're still using the brush, and you can relax the stuff. Now, the difference between the smooth and the relax is that the relax tries to average out the surface, while the smooth just kind of smoothens it down. So one of the reasons why this is such a good thing to do is because if you're wanting to maintain curvature shapes of your model, then what it'll do is it'll try to maintain the curvature, while smoothing just says, you know, screw it, I'm just going to smoothen right through it. It tries to maintain that curvature, as you can see, so it's really nice. And it's hard to explain where to use that at, but I normally use that around areas with a lot of curvature, so cheek areas and stuff like that. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of pushing in the geometry, making the anatomy areas, making those main areas that I know where the eyes are going to be. I know where those are going to be, you know, so I'm just kind of pushing those in. And even if they're not going to be there in the, you know, in the end, I can still push them down a little bit lower, or maybe even up a lot higher. And that's the great thing about using low resolution modeling. So I'm going to drop the intensity of the smooth brush down a lot more, and you can see that now we're maintaining a lot more of the surface, while being able to still kind of like smoothen out a lot of these artifacts in our geometry. Now, why is that important? It's because the geometry is going to determine where our anatomy is going to be, and we need to know how to average it out and how to keep it nice and uniform, because it also affects the shading when you start to subdivide. So make sure you're keeping artifacts out of your mesh, so that way when you start to subdivide, you're not getting all these nasty little problems that you have to go back and deal with. So the next thing that we're going to do is, and at the end of this video, we're going to be showing you a couple of other examples of what I do to maintain a nice sculpt. So we also do, I use that on the breasts as well. I use this method on the breasts as well, because it gives us that nice hang in the breasts. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to dynamesh this, but at a very, very low res. So probably about 8. Yeah, that's perfect. All right, so now what we can do is we can start to kind of like drag the neck out. And if you're saying to yourself, oh my god, that almost worked so perfectly for him, but that never works perfectly for me, trust me, it doesn't work this perfectly for me either. I always have problems with Dynamesh, so I have to go in and I have to redo it, or I have to re-sculpt it, and it's really kind of annoying. But that was a lucky one, so we're just going to end up using that. It's a happy accident that we're just going to use to our advantage. So we're just going to go in here and we're just going to use this geometry. And again, it's not that high of geometry, okay? So just remember, it's not that high. It's pretty low. Reason why is because we want this to be low. We want to just focus on the outside of the mesh. Don't focus on the details on the inside. When we start to focus on the details on the inside is when we're going to start to subdivide our mesh to make it, you know, easier to work with. So we're just going to bring this up, maybe even bring this up a little bit, kind of creating that neck area where it kind of swoops down and it goes into the body. Okay, just like that. We can also bring in the ears if we wish, so we can just kind of bring these out, and we're just kind of again, you see how low this is. Like, I'm a madman, right? Oh my god, why am I doing this? Why don't I just use a lot higher resolution, make it easy on myself? Because I just really don't care. I'm not married to this. I don't want to be married to my work right away, you know? I want to just kind of relax, have fun with it, maybe just drag out some ears, because I know this is where the ears are going to be. And then we can do is we can just boom boom, you know, retopo that. Even if, you know, if you're getting a little bit of low resolution, you can bump up the resolution a little bit higher and get a little bit higher, you know, geometry with that. You know, you're playing by your rules, you know? This is your world, so just do it however you feel comfortable. Now, if you want, you can also use the polish feature. If you're making stylized characters, use the polish feature, you know, get some nice polish on that. Maybe even just drop this head a little bit lower, because seems a little bit too high. You don't want an alien head, you want a, you know, realistic, or not realistic, but maybe you're doing stylized characters. You just want the head to look like it's, well, it's like an actual head, not like an alien head. So we're going to drop that a little bit lower. Maybe even just kind of bring in this head a little bit. And we're just focusing on the outside still. We're not focusing on the inside. Okay, maybe we can drop this ear a lot lower and then raise the tip of the ear up a little bit higher. Bring in the bridge of the nose, because we all know where this is going. You know, use the relax tool on this forehead to keep it nice and round. And then from the top view, we also want to make sure that we are also making the skeleton close to a skeleton from the top as well, so it's going to have that shape. If you don't know how a skeleton looks from the top, just Google it. It's a Google away. You know, googly your ooglies out. Okay, so we're just going to kind of go in here. Maybe we even want her jaw to be a little bit longer. Okay, and then maybe we want her jaw to be just a little bit further dropped while her sides of her jaw are up a little bit higher. And this is all we're focusing on right now. This is all we should be caring about, is just the outside of the mesh. If you're already like trying to do all the eyes and stuff like that at this point, then you're pretty much probably not gonna get it to look right unless you're like a uber professional. So just kind of focus on the outside right now. That's all you're focused on, outside of the mesh. Okay? And if you're trying to sneak one past me and you're trying to work on the inside of the mesh while you're watching this tutorial series, I'm watching you. I know exactly. I see what you're doing. You better stop it. You better start working on the outside of the mesh a little bit more. Now, if you're comfortable with the way the character looks and you're like, oh, well, this looks exactly what I want it to look like, then it's okay to move on. You know? But if you're still like, I don't really like the way that's shaped, I don't really like this, I don't like how this is looking, then, you know, it's probably best to kind of just go in there and fix it and make it look the way you want it to look. If it doesn't look the way you want it to look, then, you know, keep working on it. There's no harm in working on it some more. Keep working on it, make it look exactly the way you want it to look. Okay, just keep looking, or just keep working on it. Maybe we want these eyes to be a little bit more separated. Okay, maybe we want this to be a little bit more narrow, because it does seem a little bit kind of boxy, so I want that to be a little bit narrow, more narrow. I want her head to be a little bit more narrow on the sides as well. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, when do I start working on the inside of the mesh? Well, when you're comfortable, when you're ready, you know, just start working on the inside. We're going to straighten up this neck, straighten it out, making this a little bit more curvature. And I do stylized stuff. I don't do realistic stuff. I'm terrible at realism. Ask anybody. I'm terrible at realism. I'm not really good at it. I love to do stylized. That's where my passion is. My real passion is like making Disney style characters, but those are hard to do for me right now, but hey. Okay, for the mouth, let's put in the mouth. So we're just going to use the Damien standard, again, low intensity, and we're just going to kind of just carve into where our mouth would be. Just again, making use of that low resolution, making use of those polygons, those polygon edges. And what we're going to do is we're going to start bringing out the mouth, and we're going to start working on the mouth. You know, this is obviously the inner part of our mouth, so we're just going to start to push that in. Okay. And then we're going to start to pull the sides down. Now the sides of the mouth should line up to the pupils, so we're pretty much good. The very sides, the very end of the mouth should line up with the pupils. And then of course the mouth has to curl around your teeth. So it's really easy if you look at it from the bottom. You can actually start to pull this in the shape of a mouth. You can start pulling it out just like that. And then you can start to smoothen down this top side right here, making it all kind of like narrow. We can start using a combination of the relax and also, you know, using just the regular smooth to build it down. And then we can start to kind of curl in the sides a little bit more right through here, pushing in those sides, maybe even pushing it in a little bit more on the bottom lip. Again, I want to bring this down a lot more. If the smooth brush is too strong for you, bring it down, you know, bring it down a lot lower. And then we're going to start working on this bottom lip and start bringing this bottom lip out just a little bit, not too much. And then, of course, underneath the lip where the chin is, we're going to start bringing in that geometry. Okay, and I know this is looking really weird, but bear with me because this is how I always start my meshes. I start using the geometry to help me out. Okay. So the mouth is looking okay. It's really good for a primitive right now. You got your you got your mouth planes in there. You got your two angles that are pretty good. Now we just need a nose. Nose is pretty easy. What I like to do for the nose is I like to kind of just like grab this little area right through here and then stop it just above the lip and then kind of inverse that and use our gizmo, bring that to the very top of our nose and then rotate that outwards like that. Not the greatest way to do it, but again, it's my way or the highway. No, it's I don't know, I like to do it this way. It's just a lot easier for me to make my stylized characters this way. Okay, and then of course, you know, the bottom of the nose is obviously touching a little bit too much of the lip, so we're just gonna bring that back up a lot more, giving her a lot more space in between the nose and the lip. And I do this for every character now. I used to not do this, but this is a lot easier for me now. I do this for realism, I do this for my stylized stuff. You'll notice in a lot of my videos some of it is just a little bit higher resolution, but I can never control really the amount of resolution that ZBrush gives me. Now for the eyes are pretty simple. Let's first start creating. So some really good brushes for stylization is the pinch brush, because what it allows you to do is it allows you to not only pinch but also reverse pinch to create cavities. So what that looks like is kind of like right now I'm using the reverse pinch and I'm kind of creating some nice kind of like cavities for my eyes right through here. So if you use the pinch brush, you can create some really cool stylization with your character's low geometry. So right here is about where I want the eyes to sit, and right here is where I want the brows to be. So it's really helpful for creating that kind of stuff, right? So we can go in here and we can kind of like go in here and just push the nose or the bridge of the nose a lot more together, because stylized characters typically have like a nose that's really pushed in, and then what we could do is we can kind of just kind of start creating that little dip where the nose is, kind of correcting these cheeks a little bit, Something like that. I know I make it look easy, but it's not. It's a lot of practice. It's a lot of practice. So don't expect to get really good at it right away. If you've gotten really good at it, congratulations, you've beaten me at stylization, and you should probably start posting your stuff to ArtStation. But if you haven't, just keep working on it. It's something that you have to practice. It's something that isn't going to happen with you overnight. It's something that takes a lot of patience. So now what we can do is we can start using the pinch brush to kind of like define her jaw a little bit. You know, kind of making that nice and curvature. And the cool thing about this is even if I create a wobbly line, I can go in there with my move brush and start to move this into a more kind of like stylized kind of line. And you can see that's a little bit too big of a jaw. Let's go from the bottom and start to kind of like make that just a little bit better looking, just like that. Using the angles of your camera will definitely help you with creating your characters. So let's just actually kind of smoothen all this out. Okay, maybe make her jaw a lot smaller because, you know, we got a little bit over ambitious with it. We can also smoothen this her cheeks down just a little bit to make it a little bit better, or if you want, you can even puff her cheeks out, make them a little bit more puffy, maybe cutesy kind of, and using our relax brush to kind of get rid of any artifacts. Alright, so for her eyes and eyelids, what I usually like to do is I like to create some spheres. And again, we have this nice little Ryan's tools that allows us to create primitives wherever we've masked off our mesh. It'll generate the primitives, so you can go and you can pick that up for free. Again, it's Ryan's Tools by Ryan Kittleston. Really awesome tool set, really helps you with fast creation of primitives. And other things, and we can just mask off this area right here. It doesn't really matter if it's a perfect circle, but if you hit this, it'll generate a sphere within those areas. And of course, I have hotcut keys set to my ZBrush. So Control X will actually turn on local symmetry. Control X will also turn it off. Control T makes the item, the mesh in the background transparent, and then Control C isolates everything. So I got some pretty nifty hotcut keys that I set up for mine. So just remember, if you want to set up hotcut keys or hotkeys, I keep on saying hotcut keys, it's just a combination of shortcut, but just hit Control Alt, click on anything in your UI, and it will ask you to set a hotkey up here in the top right here, and then all you have to do is just hit a combination of keys on your keyboard, and then boom, you know, you got your hotkeys. Alright, so we're going to put the gizmo right around here. We're going to turn on our local symmetry. Control X is mine. And we're just going to size those up a lot more to fill up the eye socket area. Because remember, these are also going to be our eyelids as well. So what we're going to do is we are going to Control Shift D to duplicate those. That should be the standard for every ZBrush, the hotkey. Alright, and then what we're going to do is we're going to scale that out a lot more and then bring it back a little bit more. We might have to move these, but that's how I do it. All right, and then what we're going to do is Control Shift, and then we're going to make sure we are in our trim curve. So we're going to do this, but wait, no, that's not what I want to do. Control Shift D to duplicate another one, and then we're just going to use our hotkey, and then we're going to rotate that upwards right around here. And we're also going to do the same thing for this one as well. That should be up here, like that. And we're going to rotate that down. And now, as you can see, we have our stylized eyes. They look kind of weird, but again, a little bit of adjustment. Make sure if you're doing this in low poly, see, as you have these two poly groups now, this is going to be really hard to work with. So Control W that to make that its own poly group. Control W to make that its own polygroup, and now you can merge these down. I like to merge the eyes with them, so that way whenever I'm moving the eyes, I'm also moving the eyelids as well for the initial part of the creation of my stylized characters. So we're going to merge all of those together and then hit Control C to isolate those. And as you can see, we got a little bit of weird cleanup that we need to do. So let's actually isolate these And then let's shrink down the eyes a lot more to make the eyelids a little bit more thicker. And then let's start to position these where we want them to be. So let's start bringing these up, and then maybe bringing these a lot more back. And then let's just rotate them slightly outwards. Now, if you want, what you could do is, I like to get a little bit crazy with my stuff. What I could do is I could isolate this eyeball, mask off the back, and then what we could do is we can even show people how professional we are by using the slice curve, slice circle, and we can create some slice pupils in there, just like that. And that's going to show us where our pupil is, and then we can go in here and mirror and weld that. Make sure local symmetry is not on. Mirror and weld. Why is that doing that? Mirror weld. Is it because this is so weird? Is this a bug that I found? Okay, Control Shift D. Mirror and weld that. Oh, you know what? Mirror and weld. There we go. I guess I have the head turned around in the wrong axis, but that's okay. All right, so you see how professional we are. We have our own eyeballs in there. If you want to make these eyeballs look a little bit more feminine, just grab the top eyelid and then start bringing in this side. So start bringing this down a lot more, just like this, and then kind of making a kind of like triangle kind of shape. So bringing down the side only. Of course, I got a little bit of the middle part in there, but you know, sometimes that'll happen. So we're just going to bring down the side, and we're going to bring down this side. If you want, you can also make that kind of cat eye look, where the eye, or where the eyelid is kind of going up, and then what you could do is you can grab the bottom eyelid and do kind of like the same thing, where you bring this side up, kind of making a cat eye, and then you can bring this side, or you can just bring this side over here. I don't really like to bring that up like that. So let's grab this one and bring it more down, make it more feminine looking. So essentially we're making kind of like this sideways box looking shape. Let's bring that down. And there we go. We have our low poly character head that we can use now, and we can just start to refine off of this. So let me just kind of push in the sides of the mouth right here, because of where her cheeks are going to be. And again, her mouth is going to be curling around her teeth, so her cheeks are going to be kind of bubbling over her mouth, if that makes any sense, because her mouth is going to be curling around her cheeks, or curling around her teeth, sorry. So that's why her cheeks are going to be kind of overlapping her mouth. All right, and we can just bring these back and bring these in, and then we can kind of go in here and adjust that. And now, as you can see, just by using low poly geometry, low resolution mesh, we've already established a lot of our main shapes. It's amazing what you can do with low resolution. So you got to get used to low resolution sculpting. It's going to make things a lot easier on you, especially if you're doing especially if you're doing stylized characters. It's going to be a lot easier on you to create your stylized females, males, whatever you're creating. Let me actually just drop these eyes a little bit lower than that, because this is a stylized character, so I want her to be a lot lower. And I think I like that. I love that a lot, actually. So I will be coming out with a kind of like process video of how I establish a lot of my stuff, and hopefully it'll help you guys out with your characters as well. And I just keep working on this, because this character is like now starting to look awesome. But yeah, this is essentially how I do my characters. Geometry and anatomy and all of that other goody stuff. And I'll be doing this from now on as well, like in a lot of my other videos. But I'm going to, you know, ooh, that's creepy. Go in here and start fixing this up. And there you go. You have like some really good starting points for your character. Again, now all you have to do is kind of just up the resolution. So a couple of ways that you can up the resolution to help you start working on more and more of the details is there's a couple of things. One, you can just hit Control D, up the resolution of your mesh. Actually, let me undo that because I know I have. There we go. So you can just hit Control D to up the resolution of your mesh and then continue working from there. If you don't want to have like subdivision history on your mesh, you can always go in and you can just delete that subdivision history. So you can always just go in there and say, well, I don't want that on there. I just want the subdivision. And you don't want to go back and forth to it. You can do it that way. But I like to have the subdivision history on there just so I can go back and forth and fix anything that I need to fix. And then what we could do is we can also bring this lip out a little bit more to make it more puffy. You could do it that way, or let's just go back a few. Okay, you can do it that way, or you can do it the weird way, which is basically just, you know, grab any area that you want to have more divisions on. So like, let's say this area, you have to actually lasso select it and then make it visible. So let's say I just want the lip area to be higher resolution. I don't want anything else. You can hit Control D and that will subdivide only in that area to give you more resolution. Now if you're already working with low resolution, it's fine, and you know, if you're planning on dynameshing it, this is completely fine because it's going to give you kind of like all of your main shapes and stuff like that, and you're going to be able to like sit here and do exactly what I was doing with the higher resolution one. But it only focuses in this certain area, as you can see. It does create a lot of triangles, so Dynamesh is your next option unless you're planning on retopping this manually or even zremeshing it. In some forms, zremesh actually does really good at maintaining a lot of the shapes. But this isn't really recommended for clean models. You want clean stuff, then, you know, I highly recommend just kind of going in there and, you know, just subdivide it if you want it. But again, subdivisions, they do bump up the resolution. So I mean, if this is your only option to maintain low res and you don't want to have like high res models and stuff like that, and you just want to focus in on these areas, then that's where I would use this. But then you just kind of like go in there and you just kind of like, you know, make your meshes, mess around with the shapes, the forms, and juicy bits like that, and then you just kind of like, once you're done, you just kind of go in there and you zremesh or you dynamesh it, and then you just start working on it from that. Okay, so we have this, not too bad. I'm not focusing on this area around the lips because obviously all of these triangles are here. So just focusing on just the lips, the lip shape. We can even make this a little bit further out. Maybe even a little bit higher up in the middle. And then also creating a little bit of appeal for the character. Maybe even... So appeal is usually those things that people look for, that they're attracted to in a mesh. So some people are attracted to that little curl on the outside of the lips. Some people might be attracted to, like, you know, how the lips are shaped in general. So creating sort of like appealing things like that really helps sell your model as well. So, you know, just look at what you're kind of attracted to and see if you can't like try to make that. Okay, just like that. And already our mesh is looking much neater. But of course, if we were to subdivide this, you can see that we have an issue, and that issue is the nastiness that is obviously around her lips. So again, you're either going to need to zremesh this or you're going to need to dynamesh this. So what we can do is we can go in here, and I like to keep it fairly low, so we're just gonna hit like 1.1, and you can see that we're not keeping in that nice sharp shape that we want. But that's the issue with zremesher sometimes. You can also go in here and you can also make these their own polygroups and then zremesh it as well. So we can go in here and hit BZM. We can make these their own polygroups, the top and the bottom lip. This will also help the algorithms of the zremesher to figuring out where it needs to focus. So we can sit here, we can go in here, and we can go, well, I want this one to also be its own polygroup as well. And we're just going to hit, well, let's just do it the hard way then. I don't know why, but I don't know why, but mine was, mine's been messing up a lot lately. Alright, so we can also, make the polygroup shape a little bit better so that when it does work, it's just working a little bit more into our favor. Okay, and I do understand that there is a polygroup. There's two polygroups in between this right here. So we're also going to need to figure that out because it's going to have a tough time figuring that out. So we're just going to grab these, and then we're just going to invert that and make sure that we have all of this stuff. Working with polygroups is another thing if you're doing stylized characters. It's just another thing that you have to learn how to deal with. Okay, so we're just going to hide. Oh, actually, let's do this. Let's go to polygroup and polygroup that. See, this is the thing I have with ZBrush. My God. All right, let's do this. So we're going to grab this one. Just grab this lip. Make it a part of this polygroup. There. And then we can keep groups. And there we go. Now we have our lip shape that's a lot better than it was. And it's still maintaining a lot of the shapes. I don't like how the ears did, but again, we weren't really focused on the ears that much. So it doesn't really matter. We can just kind of shape these again. Or we can make these their own kind of geometry, since really ears don't really ever look that great when it comes to zremeshing anyway. So if you wanted to like kind of file these down and make them their own geometry, you could do that as well. And we then can go back and we can start setting up our shapes again for our stylized. So just kind of pinching off the jaw a lot better. Again. And just kind of helping us out. Using the move brush. Bringing in this jaw a lot more. Bringing out the cheeks a lot more. And maybe we want the mouth to be a lot lower, but a lot bigger. So maybe we want more of like a more voluptuous mouth. Maybe we want the sides to be a lot lower. It all depends on what you want your character to have. But definitely practice this. This is powerful, powerful stuff. Way powerful. Okay. And there we have a female character head that like we can use for base meshes, or just in general, just even just practicing. Doesn't even need to be a base mesh. You can just kind of like say, okay, that was great, and then just throw it away after that. So maybe we want our mouth to be a little bit wider. Again, when you make it wider on the side, the mouth, make sure you push it back as well. It just looks a lot better. Okay. And also this lower lid kind of looks weird, so I'm just gonna kind of rotate it up a little bit more, maybe bring it back. Just a little bit. Also, I'm going to rotate this down, just reshaping the eyes a little bit better. Okay, I don't like how droopy the eyes look on this side, so let's actually bring these up. Okay, maybe bring these down a little bit more. This is just all personal preference. If you have a different preference where you're like, oh, I like my eyes to look like that, then, you know, more power to you. But you're definitely going to want to play around with the eyes a lot. You know, see what you can get. You might want to play around with the shape and everything like that, just to see what you're into in terms of like stylization, where you want to go with it. Okay. And that's it, you know, low poly sculpting. It's definitely extremely important. So at the end of this video, I'll kind of do like a time lapse of boobs to kind of give you another example of low poly sculpting and why it's important. But yeah, and that was actually pulled from my Twitch, so if you guys want to follow me on Twitch, you're more than welcome to. I do try to answer questions on Twitch as well, so if you guys are having any issues with ZBrush and you want to kind of get used to a lot of the tools, or you want to learn something, or you even just want to shoot the shit, I'm over at I just can't stop sculpting on this thing. I'm over at Twitch hanging out. I'm also on Twitter, so follow me on Twitter if you guys want to see any of my upcoming artwork or anything like that. It's where I post a lot of my not safe for work, or just in general, just artwork. So yeah, hopefully this has helped you guys out. Leave a like if it has, subscribe, comment, tell me what you think, and I will see you guys in the next video. So thank you guys very much. Take care.